Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Cloud with Real Deal Fundraising, and this is a new tradition, Fundraising Fix Fridays. So every Friday at 12:30 Eastern, as long as I can, as long as my schedule will allow, I will be hopping on here on TikTok to take any of your fundraising questions. So if you work in a nonprofit, if you're a board member, if you're an executive director, put this on your calendar because this is going to be your open source to ask questions about fundraising and get answers from a certified fundraising executive and consultant. So I hope that you're ready today. I don't see anyone in the live just yet, so I will keep on talking and hope that we get some folks here on the live. So this is our first Fundraising Fix Fridays. And we're going to talk about we're focused on a different topic or just take questions. So if you are joining this live, please submit your questions that you have about fundraising and I will continue to yap. I have some questions that were submitted by TikTok viewers when I asked earlier this week, so we can go through those. But this is our first Fundraising Fix Friday, and I am Jessica Cloud. I am a certified fundraising executive and the founder of Real Deal Fundraising, which is a fundraising nonprofit consulting and training business. And this is going to be our new weekly tradition. So every Friday at 12:30 Eastern, we're going to get on here and talk about fundraising for 10, 15, up to half an hour, and just talk about what we can do to improve our fundraising. And this week specifically talking about getting your board involved in fundraising and getting them fully mobilized so that staff doesn't burn out. It's so important. So before we get into today's topic, I do want to share an announcement, which is that I just launched the most affordable way to work with me as a consultant. So we're going to get used to it. So fundraising strategy sessions, Real Deal fundraising strategy sessions are the newest thing that I have rolled out. And this is a way, if you can't afford to have a full consultancy engagement, that you can at least get a dedicated hour of my time to look at a specific issue with you and give you recommendations to go forward. So this is going to be the most affordable way to work with a consultant specifically on the issues at your nonprofit. And it's really simple to sign up. I have a Calendly link on my bio, and you get one focused hour to work with me on Zoom on whatever fundraising challenge that you need specific help with. And it's $250, all virtual. You will get a list of action items coming out of the session with notes and how you should move forward. I have limited spots each week because I really want to make sure that I have time to prepare and follow up on every single one of these calls, get some time on my calendar. So let's move into our topic for the week, which is inviting your board and mobilizing your board to assist with fundraising so that your development director doesn't burn out and turn over, and so that your executive director doesn't burn out and turn over, and hopefully that you get the revenue that you need so that no one's burnt out, the organization is doing well, and work becomes fun again because you have all the money that you need to support your mission as your nonprofit. So one of the first questions that I have is, what do you do when a board member says, I didn't sign up to ask for money? Didn't sign up to ask for money. So I would say that the first thing that you need to do is really explore the wording there. Are they saying they don't want to ask for money, or are they saying they don't want to fundraise at all? Because fundraising is a larger, broader category that has a lot of behaviors that aren't asking. It has a lot of relationship behaviors and public relations behaviors. So there are ways that we can engage in what I call fundraising supportive behaviors on the board that don't involve asking. And asking can be reserved more for the executive director and the development director. So there's ways in which you can partner with board members if they don't want to actually ask folks. So that's one thing I would explore. But if they are actively hostile to any fundraising at all, the first thing I would look at were what were the expectations when that person joined the board. Was there a written policy or job description that included fundraising in that job description? Was it covered in orientation? Was there any training offered for those board members when they joined your board? So that gives you the basis of how you're going to approach this topic with this board member. Because if they came in and they were fully aware that fundraising was part of the board role, which it really is at any nonprofit. If any nonprofit, the board is going to be involved in fundraising. That is how it works best, and that is how you are able to access a broader network of people so that the organization can grow. So we've all heard of the no trust funnel. I add give at the bottom of that because if you're not trusting someone, you're not going to give them money. So we have no trust, give, and then some of those donors that give will become your advocates. And so advocates fill the top of that funnel by helping with outreach. So every single board member should be a donor. Every single board member should be an advocate or a fundraiser. So if you have a board member that says, I didn't sign up to ask for money, first look at your official policies and your onboarding for your board members and see what they were told. Now, if this was not covered in the orientation or there is no job description, you're going to have to go back and have a conversation of, hey, we're trying to change the culture of the board. We're trying to make this a working board that helps support our mission specifically. And then you're going to have to see if they're willing to go on that journey with you to reframe their mindset around fundraising. And you're going to have to give them a lot of support for that change. So if you did have that in there, then you're going to remind them about the commitments that they made when they joined the board. So you're going to let them know, hey, this was in the job description, and you don't necessarily have to ask for money, but there are other behaviors you can do that are supportive of fundraising that don't involve asking, at least at first. They've got to get their toe in the water, right? So that's how I would approach it if the board members were hostile to fundraising. If they are just not willing at all to meet their obligations as a board member to help the organization grow and get more resources for its mission, which is part of their fiduciary responsibility, let's face it, then I would begin to have other conversations. If I was the development director, I would start talking to the executive director. And if I was the executive director, I'd be talking to the board chair about, hey, how can we approach this? When does this person's term end? And how can we come to a resolution that means we can fill that person's seat with someone who is more willing to take on the full spectrum of work as a board member? So if you just joined, we are here for Fundraising Fix Friday. This is going to be our new weekly tradition here at Real Deal Fundraising every Friday at 12:30 Eastern. And I'm Jessica Cloud. I am the founder of Real Deal Fundraising, which is a consulting and nonprofit training firm. And we're going to be here every Friday at 12:30, so put it on your calendar. So here's a great question. How do you hold board members accountable without it getting awkward? And this is such a good question because I totally understand. I have been in this position as a development director and feeling like you can't hold your board fully to account for the things they say they're going to do and then they don't follow through because you're staff. And particularly with a development director, most of those folks on your board, many of them will be significant donors to your organization. So that gets really tricky. Like you're reprimanding a donor and trying to say, hey, you need to do a little bit more. That gets very sticky. So it's very hard for the development director to critique the board or hold the board accountable, whether that's trying to get them involved with fundraising or to try to get them to make their own gifts to get the board to 100% participation. So what I would say is that role really the role of holding folks accountable needs to be your board chair. So whatever you are deciding to do on your board, you need to have you really need to have the board chair be the person that's holding them accountable. So whatever it is, you could be tracking their activities in fundraising, you could be tracking the board's giving, but you are the one that's going to track it and then take it to the board chair. So the board chair, as a peer and as a leader of their peers on the board, that board chair can then reach out and hold the board accountable. If your board chair is not willing to be in that position, then you're in even a stickier spot. And that might be a situation where you need to hire a consultant because you need a third party to go out into the world and come into your nonprofit and give them a different perspective. So a third party consultant like me can come in and say things, can say some hard truths to your board chair about how they're operating as part of the whole ecosystem of this nonprofit that you maybe can't, or that you almost definitely can't if you're in that development director seat, and probably can't as the executive director, because the executive director, while they are the top staff person, technically the entire board is their boss. So that gets even stickier sometimes because your ED is the one who they would essentially be reprimanding their boss for not doing their job. That's even stickier situation. So what I would recommend is that if you are a staff member and you are trying to hold your board accountable to something that they know they're supposed to be doing, you need to develop a very strong partnership with your board chair to hold them accountable to what they said they wanted to do. And if that's not a possibility, that is certainly a situation where a consultant could be very valuable to your organization. Okay, we've tried board fundraising training before and nothing changed. Yeah, I get that and I feel the frustration. So probably what happened is that board training didn't go deep enough. It didn't get down to the source. And so what I mean is that a fundraising consultant will often come in and work with the board, and they'll give them a list of things that they could be doing. So they start with the actions, with the tactics of fundraising. And what you actually need to do most of the time is that you need to go up under our beliefs about money, our beliefs about giving, our beliefs about charity and generosity and worthiness, and how to receive. You really have to dig into that subconscious piece and the mindset piece. And if the board doesn't go on that journey where they're really retooling how they think about money, how they think about what it means to ask for something and it's not transactional, it's transformational. If the board hasn't done that work, then those behaviors are not going to last. It's not going to take. It's just like whenever you start a new habit, you need to really work on your mindset. So someone said, what did I miss? Let's start over. Okay. I'm Jessica Cloud. I am with Real Deal Fundraising. It's a fundraising consulting firm, and we are here discussing how we can mobilize our nonprofit boards to help with fundraising, because there are so many executive directors and so many development directors that feel like they are carrying that fundraising load by themselves. And it's very hard. It leads to burnout. It leads to folks leaving the nonprofit sector entirely. So my goal as a consultant is to really get the folks that care about your mission the most, which is supposed to be your board, to assist with fundraising, help you do that outreach, help you grow so that fundraising becomes easier and you get more support for your nonprofit's mission, and that work is actually fun. So that's what we're doing. Yes. So thank you for that. Let's see what else we have here. My executive director and board chair don't agree on fundraising priorities. How do I fix that? Sounds like this person is in the development director seat, as opposed, because they're talking about the executive director and the board chair. Technically speaking, if you are the development director, you answer to the executive director, and it is the executive director's vision that in an organizational policy way is supposed to prevail. There's not a whole lot that you can do as the development director. You are obligated to work with the priorities and vision that the executive director lays out. So That is something that the board chair and the ED really need to get on the same page about. And if there really are differences that are insurmountable, that is where a third party consultant could be very useful to come in and give an outsider's perspective on what those priorities are and get everybody on the same page. But it is very difficult to be the development director and be caught in between competing priorities. I have been there. But technically speaking, you should fall in line with the executive director and encourage that executive director to have more conversations with the board chair so everybody's on the same page. We're talking about mobilizing your board to assist with fundraising so that fundraising staff don't burn out and feel like they need to leave the entire nonprofit sector. So if you are interested in this topic, we're going to jump into our next question. What if our donors don't want to hear from board members? I would gently push back on the assumption of that question. I bet your donors do want to hear from board members. Most research shows that outreach from volunteer leaders carries a lot more weight with your donors, especially brand new donors. So if that really was true and your donors don't want to hear from your board members, it might be because they don't know them, which is a different problem. So we might want to have our board members more recognizable out advocating for the organization. So definitely push back on that assumption. And if at minimum, your existing donors, you want your board members to interact with staff, like your existing donors can interact with staff if that's the case, and your board members can focus on outreach and new members coming in. So if you have first-time donors, then those donors would be the ones to interact with board members, because there's a lot of research showing that if your volunteer leadership, your board, reaches out and puts a phone call in to any new, all right, I'm going to go into our next question, which is, how do you get board members to actually follow through after a training? So one thing that I like to do is I do a survey. So I have a QR code at the end of the training and have the board members actually check off what they're willing to participate in, what they are willing to do in fundraising supportive behaviors, not just asking rich people for money. It's much broader than that. And then that gives you a platform to follow up because they have actually documented what they're going to take part in. And again, that partnership with the board chair is really crucial, because when it comes down to it, and there have to be difficult discussions about, hey, you said you were going to do XYZ, the board chair is really the best person to be reaching out in those situations, and not staff. That can get really sticky. So having them put it down in terms of some sort of commitment, and then having the right person to do the follow-up is really important. Let's see. How do you keep going when you feel like you're carrying the whole mission alone? This can happen whether you're in the lead fundraiser seat or if you are an executive director leading the whole organization. And this is what we want to prevent. That's why we want the entire board to be involved in helping with fundraising, so that the executive director, the development director don't feel like they are the only ones doing the work and keeping the revenue coming into that nonprofit and keeping the mission alive. That's what your board is partially for. They have a fiduciary responsibility to actually help you get revenue, get the resources necessary to make the organization's mission happen. So when you feel that way, you've got to talk about it. You've got to say that you need help. You've got to also just take your vacation days. That's really important. There's a lot of research out there that shows that nonprofit employees don't take their vacation days. They just feel like they can't, and you've got to take them. So it's so much better for you to miss a week and miss the fundraising goal by a little bit than it is for you to never take a day off, burn out, and then quit suddenly because you can't take it anymore because of your mental health. So make sure you're taking your vacation days and having some boundaries around work and your work-life balance. and make sure that you are reaching out for help. Get the help of a consultant to get your board and your executive director and your board chair working in the roles the way that they should to be supportive of what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, we only have a couple more minutes, so I am going to thank everybody for being here today. Thank you so much for being here. It's the very first Fundraising Fix Friday. I'll be back here next Friday at 12:30 Eastern. So make sure that if you are interested in a Real Deal Fundraising strategy session, you can find the link for that on my link tree on my profile.